Yeah. And that goes.
All right, I'm going to call the Board of Zoning Appeals a meeting to order January 17th, 2023, and it's now 6:36. Can you take roll call, Mr. Dryer?
Mr. Jazzwitz,
Here.
Mr. Rucker,
Here.
Mr. Smith, Mr. Metzger,
Here.
Mr. McCullough.
All right, the first thing on the agenda is the swearing in of new members. That would have been Paul. Paul's not here. So we'll table that until the next meeting. And there's nothing for Mr. Rucker to vote on, and Mr. Smith's not here.
Nope.
So we will table that until our next meeting in February. The appointment of the chair and the vice chair is the next thing on the agenda, so I would assume that the two people that aren't here will receive those appointments, right?
There's
No, I'm not opposed to remaining as the chair. If somebody else, wants it, they're welcome to. I know council has kind of shied away from council members being the chairs of the committees. Obviously, Chad's brand new, and Nick is one meeting deep from being brand new. So I'm willing to stay on if that's what, it works for the committee as the chair. So,
Can I second
but
that?
certain, there wasn't a first, I just said I was willing.
okay.
But
Sorry.
I suppose if you wanted to make a motion for that, you could, but I mean, if you have that desire, you can certainly throw your name in if you want.
I'm just gonna put a motion to have Mr. Jaskowitz be the head of the board.
Can I even second if I'm not sworn in?
So,
He's the council.
I think I could
crossover,
probably vote on procedural things, but not actual hearings, maybe?
and I think the swearing in, and I put this on here on the agenda because I hadn't attended one of ours yet. Some municipalities do swearing in at the meetings. I know Jody did at the council meeting when she appointed them. Normally at that time she would swear them in. So we may not have to swear in actually for each individual meeting.
And that's kind of what I had mentioned to you, is like historically, we haven't had swearing, the swearing in of members. Like
Yeah.
I've welcomed them, but I've not had a swearing in.
Yeah.
I was wondering if it being a statutory body, if its rules are a little different.
Well, I mean, there's nothing in our charter or in this code section that requires it, so.
There you go.
Okay.
We're setting precedent now.
So then if you did want to say
Second.
that, you could. Okay, Mr. Dryer,
Absolutely. Mr. Jazzwitz,
abstain.
Mr. Rucker,
Yes.
Mr. Metzger.
Yes.
And then vice chair, I will say that Mr. Udaly was the chair, the vice chair, up until the end. So you could assume that role, or we could nominate one of the people that either aren't here or Mr. Metzger.
Mr. Metzger, would you be comfortable doing that?
Yes.
Okay. Select the nominee.
Is that a motion?
He's probably got a little bit more experience on this board than I do, so I'll nominate Mr. Metzger.
Second.
Vice chair.
Mr. Jazzwitz,
Yes?
Mr. Rucker,
Yes.
Mr. Metzger.
Abstain.
Congratulations.
All right, moving on, the next thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Board of Zoning Appeals from July 19th of 2022. I am the only man standing from that particular meeting. So I, being the only member, will motion to approve those meeting minutes as they were submitted.
Mr. Jazzwitz?
Yes. Board of Zoning Appeals meeting minutes from September 20th, 2022. Only Mr. Metzger and myself were at that meeting. The other members have departed. So I would motion to approve as submitted unless you notice some changes that needed to be made in the September meeting minutes.
No, I would second that.
Okay.
Mr. Jazzwitz?
Yes.
Mr. Metzger?
Yes.
Mr. Rucker?
Abstain.
All right, and then the third set is December 20th, 2022. Unfortunately, we do not have a quorum to approve those, so I motion to table those until our next meeting in February.
Second. He made a motion to table.
Sure, absolutely. Mr. Jazzwitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rucker?
Yes.
Mr. Metzger?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Hutchinson, you have a planning and zoning report?
So yeah, I just wanted to go down just to update, some of you may be aware, some of you may not, just our current development status is where we're at right now in development. Currently under construction, obviously we got Madison Meadows, sections 1, 2, and 3. That is comprised of 250 single family homes. Darby Station, phases 1 and 2. 3 and 4 will start this year. And so that whole entire development was 434 single family and 88 patio homes. The Hamlet on the Darby, 67 unit multifamily. So those 3 are currently under construction. Construction approved and starting this year will be the run at Hoffbauer Reserve, which was 100 single family. Madison Meadows 2, which is their second phase of their Madison Meadows development. It's 169 single family and 56 patio homes. Darby Stations 3 and 4 will also start later this year. Developments on hold right now. We still have Jefferson Village, which was a 90 unit multifamily, and Oak Grove, which was 235 single family, both of them right behind us this way. Both those are on hold. No movement or any plans as of right now for those to move forward. Developments in the planning process. This means we've started the planning. Our annexation has started. We have Wilcox Communities. They're going to be over on the west side of Lafayette, across from Madison Meadows. They are started the annexation process. We're looking at 146 single family, 223 multifamily, and 100 patio homes. Virginia Homes is looking at right here on 42, right south of Alcott there. 150 single family, 400 multifamily, 150 townhomes, and also commercial frontage. Fisher Homes, we just met with them last week. They are going just east of where the Ready Mix site is going, right off of 161. They are planning 223 single family home development there. And then Perry Pike, we're calling it Perry Pike, which is a commercial development. The lot's right behind the Shell station here on 42 and Perry Pike. That's going to be all commercial in there. All 4 of these developments will be in line starting this month, starting tomorrow at Planning and Zoning. So they're just discussion only presentations. They're not action voted or anything like that. They're just want to discuss the concept plan. So Wilcox will be here tomorrow night. Virginia Homes in February, Perry Pike in March, and Fisher Homes will be in there somewhere as well. And then we have multiple developments just in discussion. So those range from all the way down 161 next to Dublin, next to Kyleville there. We got a potential Reichard Road north of us, residential development, and some commercial on 161. They're just in kind of the discussion mode. So we've got a little bit going on. But, be excited to see the other ones come through, planning and zoning this year. We'll be busy. A lot coming through. So that is all I've got, right now.
Couple of questions off of what you just said. Do you have a number of total approved right now that are gonna be starting or continuing, throughout the year? I mean, you ran through a bunch of numbers there. I didn't know if you had a total sitting in front of you or not.
Approved and under construction right now, it was 1,200 plus single family. We were looking at 400 multifamily, and there was, I know there's close to a couple hundred patio homes, what they call them. And then I don't have a number in front of me as far as the coming up. I mean, we've got a lot. Well,
So you listed I don't know, 400 and some down here and a couple hundred and some, so there's probably close to 600, 700
oh yeah.
between the Virginia and the Fisher.
Yep.
And then the other question that I had, zoning code, where you're kind of working through the rewrite. We've been working through the rewrite, and you're kind of tweaking that a little bit after your review. And I know that you're going to have some discussions about that tomorrow at Planning and Zoning.
Exactly, yeah. So we'll just start that conversation tomorrow. I sent OHM my list of just bullet points that I shared with the board members for tomorrow night. And they either agreed or all of them are doable. So I mean, they're on board whatever direction we want to go. So we'll start tomorrow. I'll start the process. This will be the first time with myself, with all the board members, and we'll just start that conversation. And
What kind of a timeline do you foresee for that?
I would hope 4 months tops. I mean, that would be, like I said, the bones and the bulk of it's just the districts that we probably need to do some tweaking on. And then the commercial sign code, we need to go through that. So I'm hoping nowhere near as long as the first draft, since that's already gone. So 4 months is my goal. That's what I requested from council.
And last, zoning officer, I know that you have, there's an opening, number one, and you've had some interest or some applicants for that.
Yeah, we had, over the past couple months, we had some applicants that we did review and we did pass on. We did 2 Zoom interviews last week, or within the last 2 weeks, 2 candidates that seemed like it could be a good fit, and we did an in-person interview on this past Friday. So we're just going over our notes and made my suggestions already, so I'm just waiting on Haley to make the decision.
So sometime springish.
Oh yeah, I'm hoping here the next couple weeks. Yep.
Is there anything that they need to catch up on?
No government experience, which traditionally has been my preferred on hiring new inspectors or zoning specialists. Just not having to relearn from another city. That's one bad thing about working in different municipalities. I still ran off codes from 15 years ago in Fairborn that are stuck with me. So, but he does have the candidate does have some other skills and background that would suit that position as far as dealing with public and dealing with sometimes angry public. So there's some experience that will aid in that position. So.
All right, sounds really good. Thanks for the update and try to manage it. There's obviously there's no public here. We don't have any old business. The new business, and I had honestly had hoped that all of the members would be here so that we could review their rules, but I know that Mr. Hutchinson sent the rules out to you. We adopted these rules in BZA in April of last year. Prior to that, there were no rules that were specifically in place. But did the both of you have a chance to look those over? Did you have any notes from any of that that we need to consider? No.
That seemed pretty straightforward.
Broad basis.
Right.
I had just a couple of notes. It seemed maybe there was a couple of typos throughout. I can send those to Derek. They're literally just typos.
Okay.
But then there were a couple of things that I had questions about, and we may not get the answer with Mr. Lafayette not here tonight. But in section 3D, as in David, it says all individuals speaking before the board shall be sworn in. The chair of the board or the law director shall swear in staff at the start of the meeting. So like we've had a conversation about this with the previous planner, village planner, and I don't know if there's a need for the swearing in of staff in order to give a staff report. And I don't know, there's just, I don't know, I wanted clarification on that. So I'll send you, do you guys have any thoughts on that? I mean, I know I read it out loud, but the chair of the board or the law director shall swear in staff at the start of the meeting. I don't understand why staff.
Well,
would be
the
sworn
only thing I would think is, if their report's being considered testimony, but I would assume you could just add a proviso and say, staff is already sworn, something to that effect.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
would have to go through the process of swearing them in every single time.
I've never seen staff being sworn in at a meeting before.
I don't see how, I mean, you normally you would give an overview of what the project is, just to say, hey, here's what has been talked about or whatever. I don't know that I would view that as testimony though.
No, because it's just a recommendation. It's just a staff report that we're, so it's not.
So maybe, and I'll send you this list and we can capture what Mr. Rucker said, but maybe get some advice from Mr. Lafayette. I think maybe that just needs to be, taken out.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's necessary, but if it is necessary, then we need to obviously do it because that's not something that we do.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that came from. I know we just started in DRB swearing in speakers, right? That was new to DRB.
Yes, part of the findings of fact.
So, yeah, so, I mean, that makes sense here, but
And for those that are speaking about the applicant or anybody that might oppose it or even support it, they should be sworn in. I just don't know that it's necessary for staff to be. So I'll send that to you. Did you have anything else on that?
I was just gonna say, if the staff required to swear in, then why wouldn't the board be also required to swear in every week or every meeting?
So I'll send that to you. And then I had two other notes. I'm trying to look through my notes are the required timelines, because this is under section 4, conduct of business.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if we need to include the timelines that we have to adhere to in our conduct of business. Because there's been times in the past where, we have to act within a certain number of days in order to comply with the ordinance. We have to comply with that. And there's been times where the timeline has been pinched so thin that we had to have a special meeting.
Okay.
So I think maybe we need to have another point in there under the conduct of business that just has that provision, or at least the guideline for that. So maybe we can ask Paul for some advice on how that should be worded, or what language should be used. But I think that we need to have something in there that addresses both the required timelines and then a provision to have a special meeting if necessary to comply with the timeline. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. And then lastly, and this is again under section 4, conduct of business. Sections 2A and B and sections 2C seems to be repetitive. It's like if you look at section 2, which is the conduct of the members, there's some repeating in the conduct of business, and I don't know, it just seems like repetitive, and I don't know that it's necessary. So again,
Okay, yeah.
and I guess I didn't ask, do you guys, if we back up for a second, required timelines, do you think that we need to have that provision or something listed in our conduct of business to give us that guide? I didn't ask. if you
To
had
clarify,
anything.
is it speaking to the timelines for the board or for applicants?
The board to act. So
Okay.
they submit an application, we have, is it with 45 days?
Yep.
Yeah.
Within 45 days, we have to take action. And what has happened, and primarily, what has happened is like if we have something that's complicated and we delay our finding a fact and all of that for a week so that, we can actually digest it and understand it and all that, where that extra week might infringe or impede on that 15 or that 45-day timeline. So we have to act within 45 days from the date of not the date of the application, but the date of the deadline of the application. Is that right, Derek?
Yep.
So you're
I'm just-
suggesting that we need to consider changing that timeline, or that you're saying that's legally?
I'm just saying that I think it should be
Outline.
listed in our rules, the code of conduct. I mean, it's in our ordinance, so I mean, we're covered. But I mean, just in the conduct of business, I think it might be good to have it listed that the timeline is spelled out.
Yeah, because there's not always gonna be circumstance where if we need to postpone the findings of fact to another week, then it might not always be the week after, it might not time up perfectly for that to be, so
There could be some issues.
yeah, it might be good to specify.
And it's easier to find something in a 4 or 5 page document than it is in a.
Yeah, through our ordinances, yeah. Okay, so you seem to be in agreement, and I apologize for not asking. And then.
Yeah, if I've been in disagreement, I would have spoken up.
Thank you, thank you. And then, and along those same lines, you're good with just notating something about special meetings are an option. I mean, that's a provision that we would have if we were aiming at the timeline. Yes, okay. And then I know you don't have it in front of you and you're not looking, but my point on the second part or the third part, whatever it is in section 2, that lists conduct of members, but sections B and C seem to be repeated under section 4, conduct of business. So it just seems repetitive, and I wonder if both of them are needed or if we can remove it from one part or the other, just so it's not repetitive, and just to keep it clean and to keep it concise and smooth. Does that make sense to you?
Yep.
Okay. Does that make sense to you? So Derek, I will recap those in an email, or I'll mark up this document. Actually, I can just hand this to you.
Okay.
And then you can maybe just run it by Paul and see if he has guidance or advice.
Yep.
And then maybe he can clean those up and we can vote on that potentially next meeting if they have an opportunity to look at it ahead of time, the two new guys. So I mean, there'd be kind of a quick turnaround. He would have to review it and get it back out, by the time you distribute the next packet.
Yep.
Do you guys, I know I asked, but you don't have anything else in the rules that stuck out to you that we need to think about or change?
No, I do not.
Mr. Hutchinson, do you have any? You've obviously been around the block on the planning and the zoning and the Board of Zoning Appeals and all that. Do the rules seem to be consistent with what you've seen?
Yeah, and then so, I mean, these fall in line, those are some good catches there you had, so, I mean, just to clean it up a little bit. But no, those look good, really good. And one thing too, I want you all to keep in mind as well, as we're going through the zoning code changes, any BZA section that's within that zoning code, if there's anything that you all see or want to suggest or recommend, or that we do some research on, that would change over time to do it as well.
Yeah, and that's a good point. As you go through that, keep in mind that if there happens to be anything contradictory that gets adopted in the zoning code, we may need to make an additional modification to the rule. I don't foresee that to be an issue, but if it were, you know, maybe, I mean, because you're gonna be more familiar with, you know, that code as it goes than anybody. So if you happen to see something that's contradictory, you know, you throw that out at us.
Would that be a discussion item if it were to be at a future meeting, essentially? Okay.
Meaning if there was a change in the
Yes,
zoning
yeah,
code that would contradict
proposed,
something?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be up for, but I'm just asking him to bring it to our
Gotcha,
attention.
okay, yeah.
To say, hey, there's an issue that was created that we need to address.
That's-
That was all that's on the agenda for new business. Are there any discussion items that we need to talk about? No?
Well, I guess I was gonna ask this earlier in relation to the zoning code rewrite. So, kind of some of the timelines of some of these projects, it's kind of hairy as far as the actual implementation of the new code. Will the projects that have already been approved kind of be grandfathered in under the previous code? Or how-
Yeah, so, and that's one section, that's one portion that the current draft did not address is PDUs that have already been established and approved will remain, they'll remain, their regulations for that will remain for those developments. Also, just lost my train of thought. What was your original question?
Anything new that comes in?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, so, right now, all developments that we're talking to, I'm having them follow the current code, because that's what they're in the planning mode for right now. Now, if there comes an issue or a request, as we're going through the discussions and everything, that may look like it goes toward, may work better in the new code, we'll work with them on that portion of it. 'Cause time is on our side right now with our regional creation of our wastewater and stormwater. We're 3 years before any new development breaks ground, so we have times on our side a little bit to work with the code. So I probably would probably, if there's, looks like something that may work better in the new code, I may push them a little bit, urge them to not go through a final yet. Some of these developers, even though it may be 3 years out, are wanting to bam, 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 get it done. But if it's something, if there's a lot involved that looks like it's going toward the new code, I'll probably try to.
Well, the reality is that if your timeline holds true and we have a new zoning code update within the next 4 months, anything that they do, I don't care how deep they are, they're not gonna be done with their, final development plans within the next 4 months. So they'll have to comply at that time, even if we've had preliminary talks. Whatever is in place at the time that they come for their finals and before it goes to council and all that, they're gonna have to comply with whatever the new code is.
Yeah.
Which is why you're communicating with them ahead of time to say, hey, we're in the middle of this. There could be some things you might wanna, work towards this because this is what's gonna come
Yeah.
soon.
And definitely, they've been keeping, we had, I think in the past too, we had a lot of developers review and send comments in. All of the current developers that we're working with that are under construction now or the proposed ones, all have a copy of our draft, so they're kind of going through it. They're at least got an idea of where we're heading. I have been in communication with a lot of them as well, as far as some items that we're going to start discussing tomorrow, and just starting to gear them that way. It is, the PUD is going to be the big one, and pretty much any new development come in is going to be that type of development, but it's what we make it is what it's going to, what they'll have to. So we'll have suggesting set standards, minimum standards in PUDs, so everyone can be creative, but still give them the flexibility to do a little bit, but have standards, minimum standards, where they can't just come in and pretty much what kind of previously just able to present what they have, and there's nothing, our hands are kind of tied. So.
And so to piggyback on what he said, if, like you mentioned, different phasing, of, projects. So we've had projects, like Madison Meadows 2 has been through some initial phases in planning and zoning. But if they don't, like at what point, like what's the cutoff point? I mean, like, obviously if the final development plan is done and approved,
They'll follow.
they're good, they're golden.
So.
But if there's that 4-month window-ish, and
Yeah.
they come in month 5 for final development plan, or like, where is that
So-
differentiation?
Madison 2 is already done, aren't they?
Madison 2 has gone through preliminary, they have not been through final,
Oh,
but they are prepping for it now. I would venture to see, we'll see them in March. That's their goal.
So there'll be a.
Darby Station the whole master plan has been finalized, so they'll just have their plats coming in. So, those 2 developments, and then the other 2 they'll follow what was approved initially. But yeah, anything, the Wilcox, the Virginia Homes, those will be the ones that will start the preliminary, we'll start the discussion, the planning now, but I'm going to try to, hold them off a little bit, just because there's no rush. It doesn't matter how fast they get it done. Without storm sewer and water and sewer, they're not digging. They're not gonna be starting anything, so.
And they're not gonna be done in the next 4 months anyway. I don't care how quick they are, they're not gonna get.
I'm not gonna say what, but we did have a developer said that, their timeline was 6 months to go through the whole thing.
Yeah, and we've had discussions, and this isn't really for BZA, it's more on the planning and zoning side, but I personally have a desire, to streamline the process, to make, and that's not to say to make it easier for the developer, but to draw, a clear expectation for everybody and it not be drawn out.
Yeah.
Because historically, especially in planning and zoning, we've had some repetitive, like turnbacks to the developer. Go do this, they do that, and then when they bring it back, it's like, okay, that's great, now go do this. And I don't think that's, it's not fair to them, for one. I don't think it's fair to our board, to come and revisit things time and time
Same
and time
things,
again.
right.
So I do have a desire to make sure that, we streamline as much as possible. And again, not to make it, easy, just to
Yeah.
make it.
Yeah, and a lot of that's gonna be just keeping up the communication. I am really encouraging, council and, other boards and citizens to attend all of our planning and zoning meetings for these initial discussions and for the preliminaries, just so, as far as the council side, go ahead and learn it and get questions and concerns out of the way there. So when it does finally get to council, we don't have to start the whole discussion process over again. I'm getting, all our staff members, if it's related to their departments, are getting heavily, I'm getting them involved in every development coming through, just because it's gonna touch everybody, so. I'm hoping just with that too alone, will hopefully smooth things out, maybe speed it up a little bit, but, we definitely gotta make it, we want the process easier, and, easier we make it on them, it makes it on us, but still, the key is have our standards, have our specifications known, and the rest will fall in place, so.
Just another question. It's more of a curiosity thing, but if you were to apply the upcoming new zoning code to the current developments, Madison Meadows and Darby Station going in right now, would they meet 99% of, because there's a lot of elements that are.
I would say they would be a lot, but what I really want us to look at as the planning and zoning board looking at, as we're reviewing this, is setting those standards. So if it's density that everyone's concerned with, then let's set that minimum standard. Now, also being realistic, now I can tell you, the developments that we have right now in the planning process, at least the residential side of it, the single family side of it, they're no different than anybody else. They're same size with lots, and same size houses. Now, there's a mixture in some of these new ones that we have that we don't have in other ones, as far as different residential uses. But for example, one of, I think it was Fisher Homes, they have a whole section that's all 80-foot wide lots, which is something we haven't seen for a while. There's not a lot of them, but there's those options. So, but we just need to set that standard. So if it's, we've got an issue that's coming up that build to rent communities. I mean, so setting some kind of standards where, yes, we're not going to say no or push them all away, but we want to limit maybe how many. We don't want an entire development, nothing but build to rent.
Yeah.
But maybe we put that standard in there, say we'll allow some, but you got to be flexible on everything else. So those are the kind of standards we need to set. Another big one is green space too. Open space and green space and usable open and green spaces is another standard that we need to set. It's pretty common for developers to want to donate or calculate open space as, marshy land that no one could use. So,
Yeah.
but we want to require usable open green space as well, so.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Motion to adjourn?
So,
All right.
do I get one of these notebooks too?
What?